Okay, hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to a brand new writing vlog, but not just any writing vlog. I happen to be in the midst of day one of a 4-day weekend, and God bless the 4-day weekend, truly. I love a long weekend. What we really need is a 4-day work week, so that every weekend can be a long weekend. But I digress. This is not a normal writing vlog. This is not just me going out and writing and talking about the fact that I'm writing. This is me attempting a famous author's writing routine. And this is something that I do periodically on this channel. My last author whose routine I imitated for a few days was Brandon Sanderson. That one kept me up until 2 a.m. a few nights in a row, and I was very tired, and it took me a while to recover from that. This weekend though, I'm kind of taking it easy on myself by imitating an author whose routine actually looks very similar to my own. So there are elements of this that are definitely going to be experimental for me, but the actual hours of writing very much fit with my own schedule of how I like to structure my day around writing, so that's going to be a bit easier than staying up until 2 a.m. But who is the author, you ask? It is none other than the prolific Neil Gaiman. If you don't know any of Neil Gaiman's work, actually you probably do. You've at the very least heard of Coraline, which is a children's horror by Neil Gaiman, but he's written so many other books. American Gods, The Graveyard Book, Stardust. His catalog is tremendous, and what I love about Neil Gaiman is that no two of his books are the same. Like, he's not trapped inside a niche of any kind when it comes to genre, style, character. His writing is just everywhere and everything all the time, and I love that, and I feel very empowered in the knowledge that he's been able to build such a successful and prolific writing career around so many different styles and so many different books. He's just like ubiquitous. I find that really encouraging because I feel like a lot of my ideas and a lot of what I write, it doesn't really fit nicely into a box. I can't put all of it into one genre or one style. I kind of pick and choose what I want to work on from whatever I'm feeling, so I find that very encouraging. Also, obviously, as I said, his writing routine kind of fits within the hours that I like to keep for writing in my day as well, so very happy to be working with that. But like I said before, there are going to be a couple of challenging aspects to this experiment as well. As a rule, Neil Gaiman has expressed that he's got kind of like 4 pillars to his routine for writing. The first is to write every single day, and this is actually very well exemplified in the way that he wrote Coraline. He's talked in interviews about how I think he was working on American Gods at the time, and that was taking the bulk of his energy, and he was told that Coraline was not going to be viable, so he just kind of wrote 50 words, 3 sentences every night, and that is how Coraline came to be, and that is now probably his most well-known work. So write every day, write in a distraction-free environment, which actually I think is going to be one of the challenges for me. He also writes with pen and paper. Specifically, he's talked about writing with a fountain pen. I don't have one of those. I'm gonna have to go out and get one of those before I start this. And the fourth is that you have permission during a writing session to do exactly 2 things. One of them is write, and the other is nothing. You're allowed to write or do nothing, with the idea that eventually you'll do so much nothing that the writing will be more entertaining than the nothing. Now, coming back to this distraction-free zone thing that I think is gonna be maybe a little bit of an issue for me is that I actually am more prone to distraction when I'm in like a quiet, isolated environment. I don't work well in solitude. I can sort of remove myself from a more active environment mentally, but if I'm alone by myself in a room, I'll get distracted by dust particles in the air. I will get distracted by every little thing. Certainly if I'm at home, I'll get distracted. Like, I've got laundry to do, I've got cooking to do, I've got so much to do in my house, and I'll get distracted and I won't sit and write for the designated time that I'm allowed to sit and write. So for that reason, and also because I need to go find a fountain pen before I start this, I have gel pens, but they're not the same. For those reasons, I'm going to be leaving my house. Shocking, I know, so unexpected. And the distraction-free zone, I think I will try at some point this weekend to sit down in like an isolated area and just be in the quiet by myself away from people. But those places, A, they're kind of hard to find when you live in a city, and B, again, I find like my most distraction-free zone these days is my usual cafe that I like to go to write, which I know must be very exciting for all of you to see me go and sit at the same cafe in the same seat most of the time to do my little writing thing that I do. Must be super exciting, super interesting for you to be seeing just the same thing all the time, but I like it, and it's my routine, and rituals are important. Rituals matter. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna head out and do that right now. Since I am currently rewriting my current work in progress, I'm hoping that by leaving my laptop here, that will force me to focus on new scenes that I need to write in order to kind of restructure the narrative and make it flow a little bit better. I have a couple of scenes that I've been really struggling to transition into, so my hope is that by leaving my laptop at home, that's going to force me to just dive right into these scenes, and then I can transition into them later. I did also toy with the idea of leaving my phone at home as well and just going completely analog, but technically that's a third thing I'm allowing myself to do during my writing session, but you know, vlogging in addition to the writing and the nothing. But if I hit record and prop up my phone, that's just kind of happening in conjunction with the writing and the nothing. And if I don't film B-roll, then this vlog doesn't exist. So that's where we're at. I am gonna put it on airplane mode though, just to minimize the distractions. But first things first, I need a fountain pen. Well, that is it for day one of writing like Neil Gaiman. I have just finished jotting down a few sentences of a new idea. Very similar in style, I guess, in process, if you will. Very similar in process to the way that Neil Gaiman wrote Coraline. And I had this thought about just creativity in general and the anxiety that I tend to feel about the ideas that I have. I have this anxiety that my creativity is going to dry up and that I'm going to run out of ideas. Like, the ideas that come to me they're just going to stop one day, and the last idea I had is going to be my last idea ever. I worry about that a lot, and then I have to remind myself that I have days like this where I had a brand new idea like 3 days ago and then another one just yesterday, and so I'm jotting these down this evening just to make sure I have them physical and concrete somewhere so I don't forget them. And I have to remind myself that 3 weeks ago I thought my last idea that I'd had at that point was going to be my last idea ever, and then today I have 2 new ones. Here we go. Hello, happy Saturday. I realized this morning, while I did check in with you last night and I talked about my new ideas that I've had, and I did my little like Coraline moment, jotting down an idea right before bed, like 2-3 sentences, just jotting them down in a notebook. I never actually filled you in on how my first official writing session went for writing like Neil Gaiman. So for starters, I did immediately forget upon leaving the house that I was supposed to pick up a fountain pen on my way to the cafe. Forgot to do that. Thankfully, at least, you know, had another pen with me, so I used that for my first writing session, and then I stopped off at Waterstones on my way home, picked up a fountain pen. So I did use this last night for my little scribbly moment, and I will be using this today, tomorrow. I don't know how I feel about it though. I mean, it writes smooth, but I think I just need some practice, because it's a much thicker, more spread out line than I am used to with like a standard ballpoint or even a gel pen. I have small handwriting. I think that's the problem. My handwriting is tiny, and that's not really conducive to working with a fountain pen, so I'm gonna have to write a little bit bigger, I think. It's gonna be a learning curve, but that's fine. The writing session itself. So the distraction-free zone that I chose for myself was my usual cafe and the counter seat and everything, where you've seen me so many times before. And for some ungodly reason, everything was so loud yesterday. I don't know what it was. I mean, that cafe gets crowded, and I'm used to it being crowded. I'm used to there being a lot of people around. I'm used to tuning them out. I don't know what the problem, I don't know if it was my brain. It must have been, because like even the coffee machines, like I swear to God, I could hear everything that was going on in that whole coffee shop yesterday. And it was so distracting. And it's not that way typically, and like I don't even wear headphones when I'm writing in there. I just tune everything else out and I kind of go. Yesterday I actually put my headphones in and tried to listen to rain sounds because I needed there to be one thing to tune out instead of a zillion very loud things happening around me. It did calm down, thank God. It did die down probably about an hour and a half after I got there, and so I did end up having a nice big chunk of time. And before you come for me, I do buy coffee and I did buy a second coffee, or well, I bought it. But yeah, before you come for me, I'm not the type of person who goes to a cafe, buys one coffee, and then sits for 6 hours. Like, I'm not gonna do that. I will be a continuous patron of the coffee shop while I'm at the coffee shop. So the distraction-free zone thing didn't really work out. It did later on, but not to begin with. Then there was the doing nothing thing. I really did not think that this was going to be a challenge for me, but oh my god, it is so difficult to intentionally do nothing. And I found myself at that point kind of a lot where I was just staring out the window because there was so much going on around me that I was like, I can't concentrate on what I'm doing in front of me. And then even afterwards, when I was able to concentrate on what I was doing on my writing, I would have moments, of course, because you do when you're in a creative flow, you have moments where there's a block and you have to stop, you have to take a beat, take a minute and just not do that for a second. You have to mull over where you're at in order to figure out where you're going. And I just stared out the window and I looked around at the people in the coffee shop. At one point, there were some people in the parking lot across the way, and I think I was staring too intensely in their direction without realizing, and they were all like, I dropped back into myself. My consciousness dropped back into me and I realized that we were all staring at each other. And I was like, oh shit. So that was weird. That was fun. I did immediately look away. I had a moment one time, related but very unrelated, back in like the second grade, probably even earlier, like first grade. Yeah, it must have been first grade. I had a moment where I just like kind of spaced out and I was off in my own world and just staring blankly, and one of my classmates happened to be in my line of vision and he got very offended and asked why I was staring at him, and I have carried that with me to this day. It's been 21 years. I hope he's doing good. I hope he's doing good. Genuinely, I hope he's okay. I hope that's on me that I've carried that, you know, that's not on him, but it does tell you a little bit of something about who I am. Anyway, I did manage to write, how many pages did I write yesterday? I surprised myself. Let me see. 6.5 pages plus a napkin. This was a separate idea and I didn't want to write it down in my work in progress notebook for my current work in progress, so I put it on a napkin. Also another napkin, but this was just like a passing musing. This wasn't even like a thought that applies to a story of any kind. This was just a passing musing and I wanted to keep it and wanted to hold on to it. And I'm glad that I did because I completely forgot about it. Anyway, that's how it went yesterday. Surprisingly, there's a surprising amount of new content for me to put into this second draft. It is outline. That's not 6.5 pages of draft work, that's 6.5 pages of outline, but it's outline for a couple of brand new scenes going into the draft. So my thought process on this is I know where this is going, and that way when I go back to writing on my laptop, once I'm done with this experiment, I can take those outlines and I can just plop the scene right into where it needs to go. And obviously I'll have to draft it into the story in the voice of the story and with the characters and everything and the whole, but it's there, it exists, and that is the point. And that's progress, and that's progress. And that's all I'm gonna say because I'm rambling now. So I am gonna go in just a minute. I'm not going back to the cafe today. I want to try to find a different distraction-free zone, a different environment to write in. Neil Gaiman has talked about this gazebo that he likes to go to. I don't really have access to one of those exactly, but I do have the botanics nearby, which will get me right out into nature. There are park benches, there are picnic tables, and it was kind of a dreary morning this morning, but then the sun came out, and so now it's looking like maybe a nice afternoon. That said, I do live in Glasgow and the sun is a guarantee of nothing, but the botanics do have a greenhouse with some benches inside, and I know my flatmate has used that space as like a creative headspace to be in, so I think I'm gonna go there, sit and write for a few hours on a park bench in the greenhouse, be in nature, but also be inside, and hopefully it will be quiet there than it was at the cafe. So I will let you know how it goes. version of this here writing vlog. It has been 4 days. I have officially finished my Writing Like Neil Gaiman experiment, and I'm here to tell you how it went, and how it went was surprising. Genuinely, color me shocked, color me so very surprised, because I went into this fully believing, because Neil Gaiman's writing routine and his day-to-day schedule and structure so closely mirrors my own when I'm writing, when I'm working on a project, I really thought that this was going to be my most productive Writing Like the Greats type experiment since I started doing these videos, possibly the most productive of any of these videos that I will ever do, and it was my least productive to date. I have taken a few days since finishing the experiment to try to figure out what happened here, so I'm going to just sort of explain my thought process and why I think it went so horribly wrong. So first of all, what did work, something that I did like, was giving myself time in the evening to focus on projects and ideas and stories that are not my current work in progress, if you will. Kind of how Neil Gaiman ended up writing Coraline, which was he had another project that he was working on that he was spending most of his writing time on, and then he was devoting like 2 or 3 sentences to Coraline in the evening. That is what I've been doing, and it's really helped me to flesh out some other ideas that I have that I would love to turn into future projects, but I just don't have the time to devote to them right now. So that was really nice to give myself even just a couple of minutes in the evening to jot down some notes and say, this is what I'm imagining for this character, this is what I'm imagining for this character, this is this premise, and you know, have it be on paper so that I can come back to it later. What didn't work for me is that I don't think this particular writing routine is all that conducive to where I'm at in the writing process currently. So I've already mentioned a couple of times in this vlog and a couple of times on this channel that I am currently in the draft 2 stage of my current work in progress. So while I am adding a lot of new content, I'm also obviously pulling a lot of old content from my first draft, editing that, and then working it into this rewrite of my story. And so the whole thing about leaving your laptop at home or putting your laptop away and just working with a pen and paper, that really wasn't conducive to where I'm at in the writing process right now. And I think that is why I ended up being so unproductive. I was able to get quite a lot done on day 1 because I ended up outlining a new scene that I knew needed to be put into the story, and I had reached that point in the rewrites where I was like, okay, I need to formulate and write in this new scene now. So leaving my laptop at home and going off to just write with a pen and paper, I was able to outline that whole scene with the intention of then going back and drafting it properly into the story itself. Where I ran into an issue was that once I had finished outlining that scene, I didn't give myself the opportunity to go ahead and draft it because I dove right into the next day of this experiment and said, okay, leaving my laptop at home, we're not writing on our laptop during this experiment. And I think I tapped myself out. I just kind of hit a mental wall where I was like, okay, I know what I need to write now. It's here, it's roadmapped. I know what needs to be done to put it into this draft, but I don't know where to move forward from this point because it's not in the draft yet. And maybe that is something for me to work on going forward. Maybe that's something that I can take away from this experiment, to say, hey, we don't need to hit this mental block, we don't need to hit this roadblock when something is outlined but not yet drafted. It doesn't mean we can't go and outline the next thing, because again, there are several new scenes that need to be written into this draft that don't exist in the first draft, and I know what they are. I know what needs to happen in them. I just haven't gotten around to outlining them yet because I haven't reached that point in the narrative of the second draft. So maybe that's a takeaway for me. Maybe that's a learning lesson from this experiment. Aside from that, the only other things that were really like different for me were, number 1, writing on a park bench. Again, color me surprised when I went to my favorite cafe, which is generally a very distraction-free zone, and it wasn't distraction-free. I was so distracted that day. It was wild. Genuinely so surprised. Like, I would not have expected that kind of behavior from myself. And then also, not at all surprising, was that I was super distractible when I tried to write from home. Home is never a distraction-free zone for me. Home is never not distracting. But going out and being in nature and writing from a park bench, which probably should have been my first my first thing that I did. Given that Neil Gaiman has his whole thing about like he goes out to a gazebo at the back of his house or something and just sits and connects with nature and disconnects from everything else. I probably should have done that first because it was really good despite the fact that I didn't get a whole lot of writing done from the park bench. It wasn't because I was distracted, it was genuinely just that I was mentally tapped. So I think that is something that I would like to do more of going forward, especially now that it's summer and the weather's nice and the sun stays out so much later here in the summertime. I'm really looking forward to being able to stretch my day out and have more outside time and more writing time outside. And then the second weird thing, which I don't know if there's any kind of learning lesson to come out of this, but it's the fountain pen. I don't think I'm a fan of the fountain pen. It took me a while to get used to it. I really struggled with it. I'm still not really used to it. It's just my handwriting, it's too small. My handwriting is too small for a fountain pen. I get made fun of for how teeny tiny my penmanship is. So yeah, the fountain pen just wasn't for me, but that's okay. I tried, I did something new, and I learned I didn't like it, so I'm not gonna do it anymore. That said, I think I really would like to try this experiment again, try this writing routine again in a few months' time. Once I've finished this second draft and I've started outlining something new, the whole leaving the laptop, leaving the technology at home, and just sitting in nature, doing nothing or writing, and those are your only two options, I think that could be really conducive to my outlining process, not so much the rewrites. But in a few months when I'm outlining again, I think maybe a Neil Gaiman 2.0 could be in the works. Who knows? But for now, I am done writing like Neil Gaiman. I am done with this experiment. I am done with this vlog, so I'm gonna sign off. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and ring the bell to see when I post new ones. It has been such a pleasure. I can't wait to bring more of these writing vlogs to you guys, and until next time, peace out, Brussels sprouts.